Thank you, George, for the very elaborate introduction. It's always nice to catch up with the Iyengar Yoga family from anywhere in the world. It always feels like home. So please feel free. Yeah.
So I had a question regarding your learning from Mr. Iyengar. Now, when I came into Iyengar Yoga, I came in contact with the teachings that were coming from the senior teachers and the books. So I had this understanding of Iyengar Yoga. I received a lot of the benefits, and I was in awe of Mr. Iyengar, and then I met him. But you met him at the onset of your yoga journey. So I'm curious to know, when you first met Mr. Iyengar, how did you perceive him? Was he a guru to you? Was he a teacher? Was he a mentor? And how did that change over the years?
Well, actually, I grew up listening to stories about Guruji. So my father used to be a student of Guruji maybe many years before I started, and he would attend classes once a week. And lunchtime was the time he would narrate what happened in the class. And it sounded very exciting. Guruji did this, and this man said this. So you had not met anybody or seen anybody, but you could sort of imagine characters of the class. They were literally, the relation. And then one fine day, by that time, my elder brother and sister had already started classes with Guruji. And then one day he just said, "Come along." And we were too young. I was in school. So you just follow when you're too young, you don't argue. So I just followed in class. And I think for a couple of weeks, I just stood there watching the class. So it was, what I had visualized, and you saw it in real, which was much larger than life. You were mesmerized. I mean, I had no clue what was yoga about, or whatever. I heard stories from my father. And then one day, I think Jawar's father says, "Why do you come here and watch?" I said, "I don't know. My dad asked me to come, and I'm here." So why don't you attend the class? "Oh, I can attend the class." So that's how I attended class. So it wasn't anything prepared or anything. I mean, that's, you just heard about the word. And in the 1970s, for teenagers to do yoga was very vague, I would say. Even if you told your friends, and then it became a routine. Every Sunday morning, Guruji would come to Mumbai and we would attend class. So it was so routine that when you got a little older in college and people went for hikes or stuff and said, "No, no, I can't go, I have a yoga class." So people would wonder, "What's wrong with you? Why do you do yoga?" But it was something that attracted you. Uh, there's no reason. It's just something you had to do. It wasn't there was any enforcement. So possibly now, on hindsight, I think it was Guruji's personality or what it did. Because if I look back, yes, my body pained for 3 days after that. And anybody who's rational will wonder that if you are having aches and pains which you didn't have, what drew you to class? But there was something about it which wanted you to go back again and again. There was never any compulsion or force from my father, who initially introduced me, but it was something you just did. That was it. So you laughed and you had this discovery of different anatomical parts of your body, but it was an exciting learning for years together. So I think it was just the personality of Guruji which just drew you. And you had all these people doing things and the challenges. So I guess that's how it was to attend Guruji's classes. The first yoga teacher I ever had was Guruji. The first class I attended was Guruji. And I can assure you, I never understood most of it, I would say. Because when he
Mm.
said, "Move the skin, move the flesh," I mean, I knew how to move an arm. I didn't know how to really move a muscle. So now all those things come back, like, oh, this is what he meant. So I guess
Mm.
it took years to learn, and it's still taking years to learn what he said then. So that's my introduction to Guruji and Iyengar Yoga.
And having known Guruji since your first lesson, are there things you think you could clarify for the people that know him from farther afield that might have perceptions about Guruji? We know he's a master of yoga. We see him as a disciplined practitioner. Are there some things from your closer experience that you can shed some light on the other aspects of his personality?
There were so many aspects about Guruji, which now you realize after a decade and more, that there were such unique features about Guruji. I mean, no doubt about his practice, his ability to communicate, his teachings, his innovations, his therapy, and all that we know. But as a person, I'll tell you, when I started yoga, as I said, I was young. And when you're, in your teens, everybody respected Guruji. I respected Guruji. But to be honest, we have a tradition in India that you would, play your respects to your guru. And that tradition I followed. But I can be very honest, I was following. But over a period of time, it grew on me. I realized the more I got to know Guruji, the more I realized that there was something so unique about him. Now, what I mean by that, when you know a person, I'm talking of a person, when you know the person more, you get to know about the limitations or other attributes of the person and you accept it. So if it's somebody you love, somebody you are, respecting, you see the limitations and you sort of accept it. But here, more you got to know him, you realize that he was something beyond a human being. Small traits, the level of compassion he had, it was amazing. The simplicity, when he came to Mumbai, honestly, one didn't know how big it was. And especially for me, you're not in the field of yoga, when you've started. But when you went to Pune and you realized there were people waiting for years to start learn with him. And here we were getting him. But the simplicity and humility, he never demanded anything from anybody. When he came to Mumbai, he would take a bus. And I'm telling you, there was no expressway. There was a public bus without air conditioning, and he would take that bus, which would take him 4.5 hours to go. And he did that. And now you wonder, why did he do that? So how fortunate were we or our karmas that we got him for so many years. The level of compassion, the empathy, and his agility, when there were so many people assisting him in the so-called therapy class. I say so-called because somebody who saw it, there were people all around with all kinds of physiological ailments. And but if you are an observer, you're trying to figure out what is wrong with this person, maybe take notes. By the time Guruji is in the other end of the hall. So his agility, not just physical agility, mental agility, to process what the person is having and give him what needs to be done. So I feel an all fronts is generosity. Come to think of it, what has he taken? He was a true yogi. He never asked for anything. Even when we taught or we all became teachers, we didn't intend to be, but we became teachers. What have we given? We've not really given anything to the institute or Guruji. So all he knew was to give in terms of knowledge, and the smallest, this his humility. I think those of us who are present in China, when he goes on stage in Beijing and says, "Oh, all this while in Baddha Konasana, I used to use a block." And all of us had our hearts in our mouths when he's saying, "Oh, how stupid of me," or something on those lines, and say, we have to do grounded things. So, and there, when he entered the hall, he was like a rock star. And,
Mm.
that level of simplicity, humility, the compassion, his intelligence, it was amazing. So now you realize, how can one person have everything? So
Mm.
sometimes I feel, like whether somebody would come after another 50, 100 years and say, is it the same BK Iyengar? He was not educated. He had studied till class 10. How could he write so many books? He failed in English language. And then he spent all his books in English. And Stephanie is here. We've all seen him correcting and recorrecting. And believe me, about 5 to 6 years ago, I was asked by somebody in India, some person who heads an institute, not Iyengar Yoga, but some national institutes and some institutes, who has written Guruji's book or who writes Guruji's books. And it was amusing, who writes Guruji's book? Guruji writes Guruji's books. So, for people to believe that somebody who has not studied medicine could treat so many people, he could be a psychologist, he could be an innovator, and do things. So I would tell you that what really impressed me so much, that Guruji never had anything pending. I remember when the books were being written and there were 3 4 people doing the proofs, and Stephanie would vouch, and you have done everything, and he say, okay, so much work pending for Guruji, so tomorrow we'll have a rest day or less. He's done everything. So that clarity of mind, that was amazing. So I say that people will wonder, is it the same BK Iyengar? Or, there were different BK Iyengars who lived in that era.
Yeah.
And it may come across because, with the world of the internet where people imagine a lot, I don't know whether you've come across it, but there was a write up where they said ki BKS Iyengar's father was a doctor and he wanted him to be a doctor, but BKS Iyengar wanted to do yoga. So he studied medicine and then he went on to do yoga. And you're like, oh my God, because it's difficult for anybody to comprehend that how could somebody uneducated, but they don't realize that education came from within for him, which is far beyond. So I think that's where things may be different across. And of course, there are hundreds and thousands of students who have seen him. So such stories cannot really get cemented, but it's amusing to read these kind of things about Guruji.
And you went into the field of science and research and IVF. Did Guruji ever discuss with you uh, IVF science? Because it was, I imagine in those days, it was quite like a very novel field of science and
Yeah.
groundbreaking in a way.
Yeah, so yes, Guru, I sort of started teaching yoga and got into my doctoral studies at the same time. And of course, Guruji knew about it. I mean, I wouldn't talk with Guruji as much as I did later, but since he would come then once in a while, and then he would joke because he could read the mind of people. And you see, once you get into doctoral studies, there is a certain amount of inherent ego that comes in because, you're training to be a scientist. And Guruji would sort of joke or in class, what do you understand? What scientist are you going to be? And that grounded you. I must say, it grounded you. We didn't really ever discuss about IVF as such and other things, but yes, in science. And one thing I remember distinctly after a couple of years, Guruji once mentioned, practice of yoga can change the DNA of people. And I'm talking of the late 80s, early 90s. And I respected Guruji, so I kept quiet. But I was skeptical. DNA is what you're born with. How can practice of yoga change your DNA? But Guruji said, but later I soon realized that what he's doing, talking about, the language was different, is gene expression. Although he may not use the terms. And it's much later that science started talking about epigenetics, how genes uh, are expressed differently based on different environmental conditions. And then after a few years, I remember writing an article on tensegrity, where some scientists had explained how the shape of the cell alters gene expression. So if the cell is elongated, gene expression changes. If the cell is rounded, it changes, and a whole lot of things on the cell proteins or cytoskeletal proteins. And then I realized, oh my God, what Guruji bent changed the DNA. If we take it literally, it sounds absurd, but in reality, what depth does this he have? So obviously, when you practice yoga, there are changes taking place, possibly at the molecular level, which is transforming us. Because all of us who have been practicing for years would say, yes, we have transformed over the years. And like Guruji said, it transform, it doesn't change because we can't really pinpoint that, okay, this point I became A to B in my behavior or my health or etc. But you see, it's so gradual. And I do believe that many of these things must be happening at the molecular level. Except, of course, I don't know how one studies that. Maybe, there are so many effects that we experience are not quantifiable or measurable. So I think, and Guruji would encourage, I remember when I wrote that, he's saying, yes, write new things. So he was always so open minded, like, go ahead, express in your way. He was never dogmatic or rigid that yoga has to be done this. He was always open to our expressions the way we saw it with our different backgrounds. So I think that was a great uniqueness. So he stuck to the subject at the core, but he moved with the times, and he encouraged that. So I feel that is, to have somebody to have that wisdom and also that openness to go to a subject which is thousands of years old, keep it at the core, at its essence, but also be open to it being dissected.
Mhm.
No? So I feel that was also something very unique because otherwise, when you're at the top, you don't like to be dissected. somebody questioning you. You don't. You are at the peak. Who are you to question me? Guruji was always open. So, his accessibility, because see, for us, he was always accessible. We could walk in any time and talk to him. But over the decades, when you met other great people, you realize it's not easily accessible. So he was so transparent, absolutely transparent. No duality, and that's a yogi.
Yeah.
Absolutely no duality with him. So
I think I felt the same when I first came to Pune, just how much Guruji was around and there and living his daily life amongst the students. That's what also um, struck me.
yeah.
Rajvi, you mentioned starting as a teenager and being mesmerized. Now, that's a topic that often comes up in these days. How do we make Iyengar Yoga attractive to teenagers, to the younger generation? Do you have any advice?
Okay. So, one thing, yes, we don't have Guruji now who could mesmerize people, or I wouldn't even say what. It's so very difficult to define, but yes, we don't have Guruji. But I think for attracting, let's start because, today things have changed a lot. First of all, the challenges are different. Secondly, the attention span has varied a lot, with the reels and shorts and stuff like that. The third is we live now, earlier you were only sort of influenced by your circle of friends or relatives or neighbors. Now you're influenced by the whole world,
Mm,
literally with the flat, and the FOMO increases, especially at that age. So it does become challenging in a way, but this is a time where we need yoga the most. So people don't get disappointed, people don't get stressed, the entire perception of stress should release. So I think the best way is that we are so many practitioners, and if one can introduce the children at a young age, let them come. I think first idea is to get them to come into class or practice. Second is to get them interested. Third is to retain their interest. That's the first thing. So to get them to class, I think the best way would be that if you have kids around with that age, let's have them come, let them learn in a playful manner. I think most important is that they get engaged, they enjoy. Because if they don't enjoy, there are a lot of other things. Why will they continue? So let them enjoy. So it's our duty to teach them the way Guruji would make it fun, and then introduce them to challenge, because kids love challenge. So I think after a particular age, fun is not what it is. So you want challenges, but at the same time, you don't want to be seen amongst your peers as not being able to do it, because a challenge is one thing, and this person did Adho Vrukshasana, I can't do it. So how to subtly get them to do all those things? And then I think once they get it and they start experiencing it, I think it lives for life. Another way, because a lot of people are into sports, so youngsters, so okay, you have a lot of thigh pain, you've done a lot of games, so let me help you. And then they do a virasana, so then it helps me do better in what I do. So
mm,
whatever they like to do, I think we need to enter through that. So one is, it's the next generation. And at a time when children may say, I don't even like to go to school, but we do take them to school. So that's the entry point. But when they're older, you can't force them to come to class. So you enter, or let yoga enter into them through what they like, because yoga supports everything, whether it's art or music or sports, or just your stress of exams and the competition. So at that point, we let that in. So, for example, if a child has anxiety before a competitive exam, which is so common, because I don't know, in India, it is like as if your whole life depends on that competitive entrance exam, and which must be possibly in most parts of the world or many parts of the world. So, how a Purvottanasana or a Setuban Sarvangasana, it calms them down. And then they will automatically start doing it. And then say, oh, this is something. So, depending on their need at that point, we help them, because it works. So when they're feeling good, okay, come on, Adho Mukha Vrukshasana, at least the mind gets lighter. So I think rather than very, very structured, we start Once they are in, of course, the class is going to be structured as per their age and thing. So I think that's something which is children really needed today. I think more than we needed it literally. I think children today need it more in the world because the competition, the fear of, like I said earlier, missing out and influenced. So we can bring some kind of stability into their lives. That's what
Mm.
I, yeah.
So you've been learning, you've been a student for over 45 years. What advice would you give? And I'll break it up into different groups. Someone who's just starting Iyengar Yoga, maybe they've got 1 year experience. And then maybe the group of students who've been doing it for 10 years. Like, do you have, looking back now or from your maturity of practice, what advice would you give?
Well, personally, I don't think I'm even capable of advising on this front because the subject is more powerful than my own advice. But
Hmm.
when you practice, so I'll tell you, there is a particular trend that I believe exists in practitioners. So when you people start a class, I think so, which possibly you all must have seen the teachers around, when you have a new group coming in, there'll be a lot of dropout in the first 2, 3 months because people come with a notion about yoga, a notion about Iyengar yoga, a notion about expectations. So that will be a dropout. Then once they take it, what benefits them or what they obviously see is the physical benefits. The ability to do more. So if they came with an Uttanasana and their hands reach the floor, palms, there's excitement. If they're able to do a Shirshasana, there's an excitement. So the next phase for a couple of years is self motivation by able to do more or stay more in an asana. But then, like Prashantji says, how much more? Are you going to take your hand beyond the BKS point, or are you going to go beyond the floor into the ground, or how much? Because that's the time we'll start becoming rigid. If you become mechanical or something. So I would say for the beginners when they start, let it be just twice a week. No problem if you don't practice anything at home, because if we start with a peak, then there's going to be a fall very soon. So let it be gradual, twice a week. Okay, don't do anything at home, not necessary. And over the years, their bodies will tell them, or they themselves will possibly pick up a light on yoga or recollect what is taught in class and want to practice at home. And subsequent to, I would say, 2 to 3 years, the physical maturity sort of comes in. Of course, with physical there is a lot of mental change, but what that is not obvious. Then I think one gets more involuted. One starts experiencing, feeling beyond external feeling of gratification, of doing so much, staying longer, doing more complex asanas. Then the next phase comes in of stability, where you just want to be in the pose. Then when that starts coming in, I think most people, if they cross that phase, and especially if they've not come with a very specific motive, and I'll get into that. So when we start practicing and you start getting more absorbed, then you'll want to enhance that feeling in more complex asanas. And I think once that happens, we go in. As far as, let's talk about motive. I remember once asking Guruji, Guruji, in yoga, you say you should not have ideally a motive to do something. So we would have a motive in the sense I start yoga because I have some back problem or out of curiosity. There is a motive. And then if you don't have ambition, don't we stagnate? Because you would want an ambition to do something, to achieve something. And in normal walks of life, you are taught to have a goal and achieve that goal and reach that goal. So if you're going to say that you're not going to have this kind of a goal, then won't we stagnate? Won't we become lazy? Because there's nothing to look forward to. And he gave me a very beautiful answer. He's saying you should have only one motive or one goal or one ambition. So you do it. And then once you get it, just see how far it takes you. Because what happens with the goal is I achieve the goal, then there's a vacuum. I want to be a top at in my workplace. Yes, I am the best. Then what? So then there's a vacuum. I want to make X amount of money. I did it. Then what? So that vacuum keeps coming in, and see how far it takes you. And interestingly, the more you get into it, the more deeper you get. So, either there is an evolution, there is an actually involution taking place. So, while in Guruji's classical words, you move from the periphery to the core and core to the periphery. So there is a completion in whatever you're doing. So I
Mm.
think first, for the beginners or a couple of years, just have the discipline to attend class. That's all. I would say nothing more. Just do class twice a week, once a week, twice a week. Just commit yourself to that time, and then let us see what it does to you. As for the other practitioners, I think nothing beats practice. But as Guruji would say, so, our conscience should prick us like, oh, I didn't do something. There are days when you can't. So, to overcome your guilt, you'll do something. And that
Mm.
something gradually becomes a longer phase of time. And that's something I think we could. And after that comes the phase of exploration, internally, externally. And by that time, if you're a teacher, you have much more responsibility because now you're responsible for some other people. And that's the time you can explore more. So, okay, this person has this problem. This is what I notice. I imitate that. Then I try to do it. And that over a period of time, the satisfaction and the joy you get, you know, just relieving somebody of some pain is very different from anything else. So I think there is individual progress taking place, and that practice is something. As Guruji said, you would get very angry if you would say that your practice is mechanical, means we are
Mm.
just doing it but not sensing what we are doing. So I think that would be my, I wouldn't really say advice, but from my practice or from my understanding. And this is the time you start recollecting. So many of the people here may not have had the opportunity to meet Guruji or spend time with him, but you have his works, you have his books, and many sentences will make different sense. Oh, he said this. Now you will same words, you will sort of understand differently. So many of his quotes are now like sutras. you know
Mm.
you understand them differently over a period of time. Oh, this is it. So if you take his quote, giving does not impoverish, withholding does not enrich. At the gross level, we'll say he was very generous. But as you realize, the more you give, the more insight you get. And then more insight you get, you are only accomplishing or you are only getting better yourself. So, many such quotes. I think all of his quotes are like sutras now. So something I always feel that, with Guruji there for so many decades in our lives, and you saw him healing everybody. So although it sounds very irrational and illogical, it always appeared like Guruji is going to be there with you forever. So it took a
Mm.
lot of time to accept the fact that he's physically not present. But now, over a period of time, you just feel his presence all over. So, because many thoughts, the words, the expressions keep coming to you time and again, and in different forms, in different ways. So I think all we need to do, like Guruji said, practice, but with feeling, with the internal exploration. So beginners, just very simple, just do it twice a week. That's it, I feel. And maybe some may be more I would say evolved practitioners, maybe they'll move faster. Like, if I remember asking Guruji that light on yoga, you've given the course. Has anybody ever done it? How did you come to this, so many week course and expect people to do the whole thing? So he, and you know how accessible Guruji was. So now sometimes I remember how stupid things I've talked to him. And he says, I did it, so I thought others would do it. As simple as that. And you say, oh,
Yeah.
you know, I doubt whether there may be hardly, I don't know whether we can count them on both our hands, people who have actually done the course and done it the way he did it. Nobody. Yeah,
Mm.
Stephanie. I think Stephanie wants to add something. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one who had been following his course and wrote to him. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, I also, if you look at it, which Prashantji often says in the classes, one face in all the poses. And
Mm.
if you see, people will have different expressions in all the poses. I say people because I'm not capable of doing all, but even those who manage to have that same state of mind is so very difficult. So, that's the whole thing about Guruji's practice and his impact on all of us.
Rajvi, you've written this very inspiring book called Imagine If, with stories of people with grit and determination who overcame lots of challenges in their lives with Iyengar Yoga. Any other books on the pipeline, in the pipeline? And another part of that question is, having seen so many people benefit from Iyengar Yoga, is there any level of research that you're involved with to document these benefits that people are getting?
One is, yes, the book, to me, these people were very inspirational, and I'm sure there may be many more who have been at the institute. Stephanie would remember, others would remember. There are cases which, medical fraternity had given up on, and they have improved, which is quite very difficult for science to explain, how it is. At some point, I would say in the early stages, I was very keen. Like I said, I got into teaching of yoga and research, wanting to find the mechanism. What exactly is happening? Is it placebo? And over the period of time, I realized that there are so many experiences which are immeasurable, so there is something. But at the same time, today, I feel there's so much of yoga happening. So it's good that more and more people are getting into yoga, gaining, at least, forget about the merging of the individual with the universal, the highest aspect of yoga, but at least improving their quality of life on a day-to-day basis, less suffering or less perception of suffering. So it's good. But what happens that when something becomes a product, then there is a lot of marketing that goes with it. Along with the marketing come in claims, and then these claims will do harm to the same subject. So if Guruji never ever said, I cured this or I cured that, he never really got into interfering with people's therapeutic treatment. If people took a call not to go in or go in, it was their own decision. He never ventured into that. But he gave the people confidence, and moment they went to him and they felt better, it started moving. So I feel that with the popularity and lot of claims, it's important to document what's happening, to provide the evidence, especially when it comes to the therapeutic aspects. Those kinds, it doesn't matter if I feel good and I continue doing it. I don't need evidence. I mean, that evidence, what we do. So, for example, if you take people with back problems, now, most of the Iyengar yoga teachers, back problems, minor back problems because of posture or neck issues, are handled by teachers across the world. Do we need evidence? Most of us would say no. I mean, they have come to us, they've helped, and a research study would involve 50 people in this group and 50 people in the control group, whilst we possibly handled much more. But today, I think we need to provide the evidence, because we need people to know, because yoga is, a subject. I don't think there's a subject which can do you good and not do you harm, because if something is strong, it helps. If done wrongly, it can also harm. So with people getting, yes, especially with the use of props, it's like every second person around feels if they're using props, they're doing Iyengar yoga, at least in India. I don't know about the rest of the world. Now, if you don't use it correctly, you place it wrongly, if you don't, it is not just a support, it's going to harm. And that's why I think it's important to document papers and studies which show, because the paper and study gives the evidence that it's working. And along with that, it will also provide the methodology which is being used. So we work in collaboration with the medical fraternity. I don't think the medical fraternity is against yoga, but they are against the claims made by yoga teachers. And I mean, the medical fraternity uses physiotherapy. They use a lot of therapies. They would be more than happy to include yoga, especially if it helps the patient. I mean, finally, anybody who's working with patients wants to help them. Nobody doesn't want their patient to suffer. So I think in that case, evidence is required. And what is interesting about Iyengar yoga is that in most cases, the research studies have been done by third parties, in the sense somebody has seen benefits and they say, okay, I am a researcher, let me prove evidence. So there are, I think, more than 100 plus research studies on Iyengar yoga from various universities across the world. Well, we did venture 20 years ago working with patients with Parkinson's disease. And there was a support group in Mumbai. In fact, it is still there. And they had just started and they approached us, whether we can offer yoga. And like I said, I was very excited. Still am, I would say, but more excited to show whether it works. And I said, yes, we will do a study. And we had, 60 people enrolled, exact matched male, gender, and age and status of the disease. They were assessed and then said 30 will do yoga and 30 will not do yoga. The rest of the things were same. And then after doing that, I must tell you, I had sleepless nights because now that you've enrolled them for a study, and if it doesn't work, see, patient feeling good and going away is fine. But now I'm documenting Iyengar yoga worked or did not work. Nobody's going to say I was not capable. I went to Guruji, obviously. Guruji has started, so Guruji gave some suggestions. But the final part is, Guruji has told us so much, and all of us have heard him and read him, but nobody is anywhere even minutely close to him. So, how to put it across? And then, of course, when we started working, and then we did it for 3 months. And I think after the first week, so we did it for 5 days and another 5 days. And when they started telling me that they've loved Sarvangasana and they tried it at home, and then, of course, the changes were visible. And we had a good pact with the neurologist. So I said, you do the assessments. We will not interfere in the assessments. And we will do the yoga part. You don't interfere in that. I mean, of course, we are going to be cautious. And the neurologist landed up that day and they were in Sarvangasana. And she lost her temper. What is this you're doing to my patient? I said, we had a deal. They are comfortable. Why are you worried? And even today, after 20 years, she remembers. So there we found a change in their movement, in their gait. So that gave a lot of confidence also to the patients, because once you had the evidence, the neurologist started referring, because the pronouncement of certain condition, the diagnosis makes it worse than the disease. So when you say Parkinson's disease, they're fine. They are having some tremors or they are stiff. They'll say, oh, I am stiff. My neck is stiff, maybe. But moment the diagnosis come and you Google it and it says progressive neurological disorder, I think that hits people very badly. Oh, am I only going to get worse? And I think that in this particular case, the evidence helped a lot, because we showed people for over 3 years, 4 years, they were status quo or they had improved. So which was good, because at least they were not progressively declining. So we did that. Then during the pandemic, the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India had called for proposals. So, we had so much time on hand in those days during the COVID days, especially if you're fortunate, nobody around you was sick. You had time. So we sent a proposal and we said, everybody is talking. Most of the studies were on, they got was on how to take care of COVID and, how to prevent. So I thought, what about the healthcare workers? They are the ones who are in so much of physical, emotional stress. I mean, they're working in these wards. So we said, what about doing a study on healthcare workers with yoga? So we had a bunch of doctors who were part of the study group and another bunch of doctors, except for one where we had about 36. All were modern medicine practitioners, MD or MS. And same so in the other group. And the other group were also those, the control, who wanted to do yoga, but the timing didn't suit them. So we did morning classes for them. And interestingly, we found that on all burnout, stress, anxiety, depression, sleep, on all the scales, this study group did better. And although this study was done about 2022, we did it for about 4 months. Still people are in touch, these medical practitioners. And in fact, one of them has come and says in the first week of July, they want a special session for the anesthetist. So, the anesthetists are under tremendous stress because they say we are just sitting in a way, especially if there are transplant surgeries for 6-7 hours. The rooms are very close, but we need to be very alert. So, at least a surgeon is working, an anesthetist, and you have to take split-second decisions. And the postures are such. So they really want something on what can be done for the anesthetist. So it's interesting that, while one is working for the therapeutic, they're also humans. The medical practitioners are all humans. And if we can help them, or we can see. So let me see if I can get them motivated enough, because it's a conference for the anesthetists. And maybe, if possible, if we could even document whether the practice helps them. So I wouldn't say it's yoga as such, from the classical perspective of yoga for what Patanjali says. But then every human being evolves. So if we can make their life a little better, why not? So maybe it
Mm.
will be a very simplified, modified version of what they can do in the operation theater. Yeah. So I remember one of the Israeli scientists saying that who does interventional radiology, that the lead coats that they wear for 4 hours, 5 hours, it takes so much load on the spine, the entire neck shortens. And I can
Mm.
well imagine that how do you function, So for working on the lives of others, their quality of life definitely goes down. So why not? Maybe I've been associated with these people, so I may have a little more attraction or sympathy or empathy. And I feel that, there are many things which we can work on together. So it's some kind of studies. I admit I haven't taken time down to write them. The results were enough, which in the terms of scientific publication is not good, because anything not published is not done. But from the yoga practitioners, teachers' view, I'm happy that the evidence is there and we're able to help people. So since then, I think every year we do a session for patients, and sometimes there are 30, 35 who are there in the class at a same time, all suffering from Parkinson's. And then when you see them as a group, the approach changes. So we do these kind of small groups. We have a great team in Mumbai. We have so many teachers. So yes, we have. I mean, that's Guruji's blessing, that the community is so close in that sense. Everybody wants to contribute, help out, do whatever they can. So yes, that's some of the things that are on. But I wish we could do more in this field. uh, that's one of the things that I think we could do, hopefully.
I'm always inspired by the community of teachers and practitioners in Mumbai, how much they are together, working together for the common good of others. It always comes across from the teachers in Mumbai.
Well, why I think is because we indirectly or were with Guruji for so many years. So even today, the weekend classes, Guruji stopped coming in the mid 90s. We still sort of in our mind, it is Guruji's class after 30 years. So,
Mm.
the fact that we all practice together, I think that's the biggest thing. That even once a week or once a month, if the teachers practice together, or one of the teacher leads, we don't really practice together, one of the teacher leads, generally it's Jawahar on Saturday, who now teaches online, and Sunday it's Birju. And if they are not there, some other teachers, so whoever teaches. But when we meet, that feeling of being a student keeps coming again and again. And that's why we are very close. I feel very close knit community. It's not being teachers or professionals. So I think I always feel that in every city, I mean, Mumbai is also a big city. So when people say it's very far, my only thing is, okay, Guruji came from Pune, 3 hours, 4 hours. So if we can just meet once a week or once a fortnight and do things together, the community becomes solid. And more so, this is what transfers to the generations that come. The teachings are going to be there, but these things which Guruji has given us, we can't objectively transmit them. But when you see that, I think it just goes down the generations. I feel very happy when I have a couple of teachers who say, I just want to come and help. They're not teachers, honestly speaking. They're nowhere, they have their own businesses, but I just want to come, and then they come for whatever. So I appreciate that. It's not just to become a professional teacher, that's also good, but without any specific motive. Just the
Mm.
feel good is the motive. So I feel that, if we can pass those traits which Guruji has shown us, very difficult to state, also to articulate, but many of these things have just rubbed down to some extent, and if we can transmit that, then I think uh, anyway, I think ours is a very nice community across the world. I can say that if we go anywhere in the world, you feel at home, even if you don't know the person.
Mm.
You feel very much at home. I think that's we have a lot of emotional connect, I would think, not just a professional connect, because any part of the world, because yeah, even if I don't know the person, I think we'll end up talking and, being with you. So that's another uniqueness, I think, of Iyengar Yoga.
Well, Rajvi, I think that's a beautiful note to end this
Thank you.
Q&A on. Thank you for helping us to celebrate International Day of Yoga.
Yes.
And we look forward to having you here live in person in Hong Kong.
Thank you, George, for inviting, and thank you all for joining in. So have a good rest of the day and enjoy the International Day of Yoga tomorrow. Thank you all for your patiently listening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.